Welcome back to the Glow Up Girl podcast. I'm Kyra. All right, I am excited to welcome Alara into the podcast. Welcome, Alara.
Yay! I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yes, awesome. First of all, I am loving your vibe. Like, it is
Mm.
just so soothing, so calm over there. I need to come over there with you, girl, so that we can
No.
vibe out together.
Yes.
I love it. Well, let's get started. Why don't you tell the audience listening or watching who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. So I'm Alara Sage, and I'm a spiritual teacher, a healer, and an activator of Kundalini Shakti energy. And I'm the founder and creator of Unity Academy, which is an academy for seekers to really find wholeness in themselves, body, mind, and spirit.
Awesome. I love that. So that explains the vibe you have as well. You also refer to yourself as the ecstatic life mentor. Where did that come from?
Oh, it came through from one of my experiences I had of spiritually awakening. Do you want me to share that story? Because it's a
Yeah.
pretty interesting one.
Yes.
So in 2013, 2014, at that time, I was doing physical therapy 2 courses, meaning I was working on their bodies. And they were
Mhm.
one of my primary teachers of becoming a healer and so much. They've taught me so much. And so one day I got in my car and I was going to go drive to go to the horses. And luckily I was on a back road because my higher self came in and said to me, Om 3 times. So at that time in my life, I had a meditation practice. I meditated every day. I knew what oming was, but it wasn't something that I practiced. So I was like,
Mhm.
okay, sure. So I'm driving and I just take a nice deep breath.
Mhm.
Om, all the way to the end of my breath. And I did that 3 times. At the
Mhm.
end of the third breath, an energy shot from the base of my body near my perineum all the way up through my body, out my crown, and I went into a full body orgasm.
Wow.
So much so that I had to pull the car over and be with myself, right? Because it was really intense.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I love that. I love that. I can't imagine what that must have felt like while you were driving.
Yeah, well, and the interesting thing is for one, I had never had a full body orgasm, not sexually, let alone driving my car. And
Mhm.
even sexual orgasm at that time in my life wasn't very easy. I had to really concentrate. Everything had to be so perfect. So this was totally out of the box for me. And
Mhm.
long story short, what happened after the orgasm subsided was I was in a real state of ecstatic bliss.
Mhm.
And, what had happened to me was it was what's called a spontaneous Kundalini awakening. I knew nothing about Kundalini at the time. I wasn't practicing Kundalini. It was a spontaneous awakening. But it showed me the difference. It showed me what was possible. There were possible of these ecstatic states versus what I was really experiencing in my life at the time was I was experiencing a lot of shutdown and numbness. And I wasn't
Mhm.
even aware of it. We don't know what we don't know. And from the outside perspective, I had a perfect life. Everything seemed great. And this woke me up to, wow, it's really not great. I have never
Mhm.
felt that in my body. And now I have those experiences all the time.
Mhm.
And so that's why I call myself the ecstatic life mentor, because I'm really here to help people connect to their ecstatic selves, which is unity consciousness.
Yes. So I do have a follow-up question, and that's only answer only if you're comfortable with it. I don't want to
Okay.
be prying, but so you said you realized at that time that maybe your life wasn't perfect or you know um what did you do from that moment, if I may ask?
Yeah. And please, I have nothing off the table. So ask me anything. I'm an open book. Yeah, I left my marriage and totally just threw my life upside down, positively. My ex-husband and I, we had a really great relationship. We still do. There was nothing wrong with our relationship. There
Mhm.
was really nothing wrong with my life, except that I really wasn't lit. I wasn't alive.
Yeah.
I was pretty dead and shut down. So, yeah, I left my husband. I already had my own business at the time. And so I
Mhm.
just poured myself into that and into expanding myself and my own spiritual evolution.
So thank you so much for sharing that. That's amazing. And I'm glad that, it obviously you and your ex-husband, you still have a good relationship and, but you were awakened
Yes.
and now living the life that you were called to live. So I love that. So you are going to talk to us about pleasure. But let's start with, because it's from a mindset, let's start with like, what do you see? How do you see performance mindset?
Yeah. And this is a term that I find when I use, people misunderstand.
Hmm.
So I invite the audience to just really hear this. Performance mindset is, we can call it perfectionism, right? Another way
Hmm.
of seeing performance mindset is people pleasing. And it's when we should ourselves and when we, put pressure and force on ourselves to do things. Like, I have this to-do list, I have to get it all done or
Hmm.
else I'm not worthy, right? I have to accomplish so much or else I'm not worthy. And, this is in the energy of force. And it's force that we place upon ourselves. And it's really this distorted energy that our society has been in.
Hmm.
What it has done to us, it has worked us into the ground.
Yeah.
Most people are just working themselves into the ground, believing, and I have done this, that that's what we need to do, or that's what we're supposed to do, or that's what's going to bring us happiness, right? But performance mindset ultimately comes from a space of lack because it believes that we aren't enough. We aren't worthy. We aren't valuable until we, right, get what we need to do on the
Right.
list done, until we
Mhm.
succeed, until we reach a certain level. Until this happens, I can't rest because I'm not
Right.
worthy. So
Yes.
that's a subconscious belief structure that drives us. It creates, exhaustion. It
Hmm.
creates overwhelm. It creates a real sense of unfulfillment because it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what you get to, the fulfillment, you'll have
Right.
like a fleeting glimpse of like,
Yes.
oh, that's wonderful. And then it's just again empty.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, now I got it on to the
Yes.
next thing.
Yes. I thank you so much for that. Because, and I love that you use the word fleeting
Mm,
because it is. I mean, it's just like you said, every day people sit down, they have a to do list full of things, and they don't feel accomplished until they do these things. But then it's just for, like you said, a moment. And then the next day, there's a new list of things to do. And so you're constantly chasing something that's really unobtainable. And like you said, it's just creating there's lack because you never feel fulfilled.
yep. And what it creates is it creates tension in our
Mhm.
physical bodies, our emotional bodies, and our mental bodies. And tension doesn't allow for our true power. We are extremely powerful beings.
Mhm.
But in order to enable that power and access that power, we have to be able to let go of the tension.
All right. So how do we make that shift from the performance mindset to into the moment and into pleasure?
Yes. So again, just helping to define what I mean by pleasure. I know that we kind
Mhm.
of talked about orgasm but
Yeah.
pleasure is literally like anything and, anything that brings you pleasure. And the beautiful thing about pleasure is it really opens up our energy centers.
Mhm.
And when we open up our energy centers, we're able to start to access that power that I'm speaking to. And
Mhm.
so learning how to be in pleasure, the first step is to like give yourself permission to take, if small breaks of your day to just do something enjoyable
Mhm.
for yourself. That could just be sitting with just a small piece of chocolate, right? And just really
Yes.
savoring, this feels so good, right? It could
Mhm.
just be like, just for a moment, just like rubbing yourself, giving yourself a massage, right? It could be first thing in
Mhm.
the morning, taking a bath, but you're really granting yourself, I'm doing this for my own pleasure, like the
Mhm.
conscious awareness that that's why you're doing it. Ultimately, as you do this more and more, what happens is you start to open yourself up to the pleasure that exists in every single moment. And this is kind of hard for some people to understand. But
Mhm.
regardless of what you're experiencing, even severe pain, when we are able to relax into severe pain, it actually shifts into euphoria and ecstatic bliss.
Mm. So, Alara, you said that it is essentially, hard for people to shift into this mindset because I'm just thinking about, like, I'm right there with you. Like, there are moments in the day when I'm working when I may just like walk outside with my puppy and it's like,
Mm.
"Ah, okay, this is like, I love this. Like, this is my moment, right?" But do you find that in some instances, people may feel guilty because they allow for themselves to have that moment of pleasure?
Oh, I love so much that you asked that. Yes. Or they put it as one more thing on their to-do list. I gotta get pleasure ticked off, and, like, that's not the point, right?
I'm
It's coming up.
scheduling pleasure, please.
Yes, pleasure, and I'm gonna make it as a performance, right? So that
Right.
you've
Yeah.
taken pleasure into the performance.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. And this is part of our conditioning, right? Is the guilt and even the shame of it, right? And this
Mhm.
is a lot of what I've dealt with in my own body and a lot of what I've helped women in particular, because women, I would
Mhm.
say, hold a little bit more shame, although men do as well.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, with regards to shame around pleasure. Women are not hardwired to gift ourselves that. We're
Mhm.
hardwired to give it to other people, to nurture
Mhm.
and nourish and take care of everybody else. And so,
Mhm.
yes, absolutely. It's very common. And thank you for bringing this up to feel guilt and even shame. And so, the practice with that is the awareness that you feel that, right?
Mhm.
And it's just a belief. And it comes from what I was talking about with the lack, like that you're not worthy. And so
Mhm.
see how that core belief of you're not worthy, you're not valuable, you're not enough is driving your life
Yeah.
to the point that you can't even gift yourself a moment of pleasure, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And just know that awareness is such a beautiful gift. Like if we just like, okay, in this moment, I'm trying to give myself pleasure. And what I'm doing instead is guilting myself. Just be with that.
Mhm.
Just breathe
Yeah.
into your body. Okay, that's okay. If you can like, I love you, sweetheart. Like, yeah, I got you. Like,
Mhm.
I feel you. You're feeling guilty. Just acknowledge it because awareness is the
Mhm.
first step to transmuting, alchemizing, shifting that energy.
Yes. I love how all these things connect. It is just amazing. Because it is like you said, women are often pleasing
Yes.
and the people pleasers and let me do this for like you said, let me do this for somebody else. And often, I mean, not to for a lack of a better word, like I'm being a martyr, right?
Absolutely.
Um,
Yes, that's exactly
I'm
what it is.
just going to like,
Call it like it is.
I'm not going to buy myself anything, but I'm going to buy stuff for everybody else. And then on the inside, I'm going to feel bad because I really want to do something for myself and I didn't. And people, everyone listening and watching, I am not calling out anybody. I'm saying it because I've done this. I've done this, like I've done this myself. And then I had to take a step back and say, I mean, you up here like playing a martyr, but not playing a martyr and saying like, "Oh, I can't do this for myself. I'm gonna do it for everybody else." But until I stopped and said, "This is how I reward and give like, this is where Kyra finds joy." And then I
Mm.
started to take those moments and most times, like, it's not even like a materialistic thing. It's just a moment of like, maybe I pick up a book and I get to read a chapter, as opposed to saying, I'm going to read that book later in the week and then you never read it. Also,
Mm.
if I didn't schedule it.
I
So,
love that, and I
yeah,
really felt that with the book for you. You must really enjoy reading because
I
I
do.
felt it in your body. I felt
Yeah,
it being a pleasure for you. And I
yeah,
love how you say it's not about material. It's not about buying ourselves stuff, although that can be beautiful too. There's no right or
yeah.
wrong in giving ourselves pleasure, but I love the way you say just walk outside with your puppy or read
Mhm.
your book. Yes, it's about gifting yourself those moments. And like I said, really acknowledging that you're doing it for just pleasure. Like you're gifting yourself pleasure. And what happens is it becomes this really, at first it's hard. And you're kind of like,
Mhm.
oh, this doesn't feel so good. Or like we talked about the guilt or shame. And then after a while, you're like, oh my God, that felt so good. And it was
Mhm.
3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10, 20 minutes out of
Yeah.
my day. And then you come back in and you're just like beaming, right? You're like, oh, I feel
Mhm.
so good. And you're like ready to take on that to do list.
Yes. Yes. Okay, so let's talk about like our nervous systems. So, How does the health of our nervous systems impact our life? Let's start there.
Yes. So, as we were talking about before with the performance mindset, what humanity has done is we've put ourselves in a very heightened state of our nervous system. We've been in fight or flight, right? We call it
Mhm,
the rat race. Like it's a known thing. We're like, oh, it's the rat race. Like it's so funny how we call these things out in humanity. So we put
mhm,
ourselves in this fight or flight. We're not meant to be in that all the time. That is meant to be like if you are literally in a physically endangered space, right? Like you are being
mhm,
chased by a lion or like something very dangerous. Otherwise, your nervous system is meant to come back into what's called the parasympathetic nervous system, which is rest and digest. Okay.
mhm,
There's actually
mhm,
three parts to the nervous system, but those are the two primary ones. And so rest and digest is where you process the stimulation of what just happened, which is
mhm,
really important. Processing any kind of intense energy is really important because if we don't process it, we store it. We store it in our bodies and it becomes
mhm,
disease or illness or injury. Of
mhm,
course, also digest, right? The ability to digest. And so the nervous system runs, our vagus nerve particularly is a superhighway running from our brain all the way through our major organs, communicating from our brain to all of our major organs. And it releases all these hormones that are constantly balancing our system in association with what the nervous system says is happening. So when
mhm.
we're in a heightened state of fight or flight, the nervous system is also always releasing I just went blank on the hormone. I do that sometimes.
No worries.
Adrenaline. It's
Yeah. Okay.
releasing
Yeah.
adrenaline until
Mm,
our adrenals run out, right?
yeah.
And it's releasing other chemicals that are, again, also not meant to be a
Mhm,
constant state. Meanwhile, what happens when we are in this constant sympathetic nervous system, it's called fight or flight, is we increase our resistance to pain.
mm,
Okay. We decrease our sensitivity, our ability to feel, which
mhm,
means we are decreasing our ability to feel our own emotions and have empathy and compassion for ourselves
mhm,
and for others. It also means
mhm,
that we're reducing our ability to be in the present moment
mm,
and to fully engage with
mm.
life.
Right.
And so, the vast majority of humans, I have been through this so intensely with myself, are in a fight or flight state in their nervous system. It doesn't mean that you feel anxious because I didn't feel anxious. I was actually shut
Mhm,
down. That's another version of how
mhm,
you can
mhm.
move past anxious into just numb.
Gotcha. Mm,
And so you can't experience pleasure. It's just this because pleasure and pain are the same coin. And
mm,
so the same way that you're reducing your ability to feel pain, and it's not a good reduction. I know that sounds really great. Like, yeah, and I want to reduce the feeling of pain, but that's not how we do it empowered. And I could go, that's a whole nother conversation of how we do it
mhm.
in an empowered way. But simultaneously, you're reducing your availability to pleasure. And that's back to my story of how I was shut down. I couldn't feel joy. I couldn't feel pleasure in my life.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay. So now let's go on the other side of that. How does pleasure affect the nervous system?
So when you're gifting yourself pleasure, you can't be in pleasure and in fight or flight at the same time.
Hmm.
Doesn't work, right? Like, I mean, that
Yeah.
makes logical sense, right?
Is that, yeah.
So when you're gifting yourself that pleasure, you're literally telling yourself, nope, we're good. We're safe. We're safe to the point that we can gift ourselves pleasure and get
Hmm.
our mind out of like saving our own lives. And that
Hmm.
immediately starts to release endorphins in your brain. Pleasure releases endorphins. And endorphins are those feel good chemicals that begin to relax our nervous system and bring it into parasympathetic.
Nice. I like that. Okay. So we talked about the energy orgasm earlier. And so now people listening or watching out there might be saying, how can I, Alara, tell me how can I experience that as well?
Yes, great question, right? So, it has a lot to do with what I talked about with the Kundalini Shakti. So, some of the listeners might have heard of Kundalini as in Kundalini yoga. and it's known as Kundalini Shakti. I call it Shakti because it's in reference to the goddess of Shakti, which is an entire story that the listeners can go research. But the Kundalini Shakti is an energy that resides in our body, and it resides right above our perineum inside our body. And the symbol of Kundalini Shakti is the cross with the two snakes. And if you've ever noticed, that's the symbol for Western medicine. And Western medicine stole it from Kundalini because Kundalini is your own internal healing energy. It's also your liberation. So when Kundalini, the point of Kundalini is before we activate the Kundalini, it's like a coiled snake at the base of your body. And that's why it's referred to as a serpent energy. It just sits there like a coiled snake. Once you've activated, it begins to move and it rises up your body. And eventually, depending on your own particular process, it goes out of your crown. And at that point, you reach divine union, which is that ecstatic state that I spoke to. So it's very, very blissful, very full of love. I mean, it's absolutely tremendous. It's literally vibrating in ecstasy in every cell of your body. So the process of activating that Shakti energy and learning how to move her through your body. It's one of the things that I do and teach. And I just want to say, because if people start to research Kundalini, they're going to see a lot of like, beware, it's super dangerous. And because it's a very, very powerful energy. This is your power. Kundalini Shakti is the energy of creation. It's literally everything. And so when we connect to this power in ourselves, our ability to create our reality takes on a whole nother flavor of existence. And it's just so tremendous. It's such a beautiful, beautiful energy. It is the divine feminine. And the divine feminine hasn't been on our planet for over 5,000 years. I'm not talking femininity, not talking feminism, I'm talking about the sacred feminine energy that is in all of us, regardless of sexual identity. So in understanding that energy, the way that I teach it is very, very conservative. And it's really working with the wisdom of the body so that it's not dangerous at all, because it's really gifting yourself, your body outside of your mind, the process of awakening her and moving her through your body. You just open yourself up to this pleasure and this love and this deep connection and all these things that we crave, we yearn for as humans. And then you start getting what I call bliss hits, where the bliss just runs through your body. And that's the energy orgasm.
Awesome. Ah, yeah. Well, that is very interesting. I think that's very interesting. I like bliss hits though.
Yep.
I can't imagine like what a day is like for you now that I mean, now that you've uncovered this and you are living life um like on fire. So for a
Yes.
lack of a better way of saying it, like what
Hmm.
is it? What does Alara feel throughout the day?
Yeah, it's so much fun because I live my life via these bliss hits.
hmm
So, like, for instance, I also have a podcast. And so I'll interview guests and then I'm like looking for that bliss hit in my body when they speak. Like, I got one when you were talking about your books,
hmm
reading books, because I can tell when somebody is passionate about something. I can tell when somebody is talking about something that lights them up. I
hmm
get a bliss hit. And so it's like, oh, yeah, I can tell that truly lights you up authentically.
Yeah.
I want to hear you talk about that. And I ask my body and ask myself, okay, what do we want to do today? What's going to light us up today? And I
Mhm.
truly live by that. And it's the life of pleasure. And it's also a life of power and a life of major impact and
Mm.
influence.
Yeah, yeah. I actually really love that and love that for you because it's just there's something very freeing
Yes.
about it. And I think that's really important. Not enough of us get to live free. Because like you said, we're either in that fight or flight mode or we're just trying to survive. Oftentimes it just feels like you're just trying like, I'm just trying to survive. You're trying to get by. And when you think of the alternative of being able to live life more pleasurable and more free, like that's a beautiful thing.
Absolutely. And I love how you say that because the Shakti is literally the energy of your liberation. So I love how you connected to living free. And
Yeah.
I just want to say to the audience, everybody has this opportunity. I know sometimes when we're in that fight or flight and when we're in that getting by, it can
Mhm.
really seem like, oh, that's great for her, right? I
Yeah.
don't get that opportunity. And that's just not true. Like life doesn't happen to us. We create our reality.
Mhm.
And I understand it doesn't always feel like that. I've been in some really, really challenging places in my life. And I've learned how to move myself through them from a conscious space.
Yeah. And you've shared some of your journey with us. So it's not like, no, ain't no, you're not listening going, oh, well, she's just, it works for her, but she's not telling us. But you
Right.
have told us. And
Right.
I think that's really awesome. But I love that, because my word of the year, I do word of the year, and it's
Mm.
freedom. So very
Ah.
right. Yeah. So this is like awesome for me to hear in this moment. So, and I just, like we want that. I want that for other people,
Mm.
like to not be in a fight or flight mode like all the time and not feeling like you are fulfilled, not feeling lack. And so, and I think um, it, even though it's a new year, I mean, we've come into new year, but it still feels like so many people are still in 2023 and still in that they are still fighting. They're still trying to survive. And so I'm very hopeful that what you have shared today will help a lot of people who are listening or watching us. Because I think and I can't speak for everyone out there, but I can just go on myself and what conversations I've had. And I think people are just grasping for something that feels like not the thing that they've been in.
Yeah. And that's a beautiful place to be, right? When we're ready to say, I don't want this anymore.
Mhm.
Like, if anybody is listening and you're in that place, I honor you so deeply. Actually, I celebrate you because
Mhm.
when you're at that point that you say, I don't want what I currently have, then you are ready to make massive transformation. It's not going to be easy, but you are ready to do it. And I don't know if you know, or you're connected to astrology at all, but January 20th, Pluto goes into Aquarius. And if anybody has, listened to music or anything,
Mhm.
we are upon what's called the age of Aquarius. And so freedom is the perfect word for this year because this is beginning the process. It's a major astrological event that's triggering us into this space. But I will say, and this is really important, that that doesn't mean it's going to be rainbows and butterflies because
Right.
what it means is we have to free ourselves from our limiting beliefs. And we have to free ourselves from the core suffering of humanity that is the belief that we are separate from divinity. That is what we believe. And that is the most painful, excruciating belief ever. I have physically felt it in my body. It is
Mhm.
so painful. And so freedom isn't just like, oh, no, like it
Right.
takes
Yeah.
conscious effort. And
Yeah.
I will say to the listeners, now is the time. Now is the time to start taking that conscious effort because it's actually going to get more challenging to not be conscious of these things any longer in yourself than it is to kind of start riding the wave that is currently
Mhm.
happening.
Mhm. Oof. I am also an Aquarius too, so
Oh, no wonder you're all connected to it. When's your
also
birthday?
out is February 11th.
What a wonderful day. 211.
Yeah.
Delicious.
Okay. Well, this has been so empowering,
Mm.
informing, all those things. Can you tell anyone listening or watching out there what programs you offer, how they can work with you one on one, and how to connect to you?
Absolutely. So, my primary program is the Unity Academy, and this is a platform of a bunch of courses. On top of, we do at least bi weekly live sessions. You get a lot of time with me for an extremely reasonable price because working with me one on one is an investment. So, I opened up my container to really take on more people. And I'm a highly creative person. So, I am just constantly creating new content, new information, new experiences. I love giving to my audience. So it's the best way to really interact with me. You also get community and like minded individuals. It's just a beautiful space. Or you can also work with me one on one. It'll definitely change your life. That's for sure. That'll be guaranteed in a positive way. Um,
Yes.
and, and you can find me at my website, alarasage.com, and you can go to the Unity Academy. I also offer a lot of free experiences, free events. I'm a big giver. So if you join my newsletter or anything like that, you're just going to get to experience a lot that I give to my audience. You can also find me on social media at Alara Sage.
Awesome. Thank you. I love that. All right. So we are going to move into three things with Alara and ask you three questions. All right. That helps us get to know you a little bit better. So I always say three questions, but I start out with a two-parter. Number one, how do you start and end the day?
Always with meditation.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Number two, what's a goal or an intention that you have set for yourself this year?
It's all about my academy. I have so much I'm creating there, and like it lights me up so hard to broaden into that space for myself because I've been doing a lot of one-on-one. And
Mhm.
like it's really lighting me up to bring it into people that can't afford one-on-ones
Mhm.
and bring it to a bigger audience like that.
Awesome. I love that. All right. And the last question is what's a book, a podcast, a show, anything that is inspiring you right now?
Yeah, it's a book called The Flower of Life, which I read many years ago, like in 2016.
Mhm.
It's a very beautiful and intense book. And it came back into my space. And so I'm like rereading it from a different level of consciousness. And if you are interested in spirituality at all, it is really delicious.
Awesome. I like that. All right. So before I let you go, would you please leave the audience with three things you'd like them to take away from our conversation today?
Yes. The first thing is gifting yourself permission. And the second thing is to acknowledge, right, any guilt or shame that you have around gifting yourself that permission.
Mhm.
And the third thing is to, I invite the listeners to start to become aware of their state of being and their nervous system because that alone will absolutely change your life.
Awesome. I love those. Thank you so much. Like I said, there is just a very nice vibe here with you. And I've loved this conversation so much. It's very calming. You're very calming
Mm.
and very calming spirit that just puts you at ease. So Laura, I want to thank you so much for the time and coming to visit us on the show. You can always come back in the future. But I hope that this year for you is amazing with your academy. And, there's something to people who like to give back to others. Like I will see you will be blessed abundantly. So
Mm.
I want to leave you with that,
Oh my gosh, my love. Thank you so much. That was such a beautiful blessing. I really received that into my heart. Thank you.
girl. All right. Well, stay tuned, everyone. I'll be right back.